So we are live. I think this is day 9 of the 21 days of wellness. And I tell you, I have experienced a transformation personally from a wellness standpoint in this time frame. Different location, as you can see, if you are watching and have been following along. But man, wellness. And I really think we underestimate wellness in a lot of respects. And I want to talk today a little bit more about personal experience with chaos, frustration, and confusion, and how I navigated through some very unique chaos, frustration, and confusion in my own personal life. And I want to talk about one of the most chaotic moments in my life over the last number of years, and it corresponds with the passing of my father, as well as the diagnosis of my oldest daughter with type 1 diabetes. And one of the things that I want to share about chaos or chaotic moments is you will respond in those moments depending on the wellness that you have been infused with. And the reason I say that is when my dad passed away, and I'll tell you, about it in a moment. First of all, it was unexpected. And when I say unexpected, I mean that, of course, anybody can go at any point in time, but the circumstance, the way things happened with my dad, it was just uncharacteristic. And there was a lot of sinister things connected with it that I may share a little bit of. I really go into a lot of detail in my book about that situation entitled My Daddy Told Me He Was Murdered. And there's some unique aspects there, but the focus is, and what I want to talk about today, like how I realized, I'll tell you the story, but I want you to think about, I realized that because of the wellness that I was pursuing well before the circumstance, I didn't have a meltdown and just an all-out breakdown. And I've seen a number of situations with people in the past where they deal with situations and circumstances, and these situations and circumstances catch them off guard, and next thing you know, it's like it's just all out meltdown city. And I understand why it's meltdown city, but I need you to understand that when you have a regular practice of pursuing wellness, when you have a regular practice of, sowing into planting value into your well-being before you need it, then it positions you to get so much value out of chaos, frustration, and confusion, and be able to lead to wellness in how you respond to it and deal with it. Like I said yesterday, one of the ways that chaos, frustration, and confusion is going to lead to wellness is that you have to decide to dominate the chaos, the frustration, and confusion. And what I'm going to share with you with regard to my own experience is going to share with you and help you understand how, when you fill yourself with wellness things before you deal with chaos, frustration, and confusion, it can position you to be able to dominate the chaos, the frustration, and the confusion, right? And so my dad, in 2019, it was around November, actually middle of November, of 2019, he ended up having surgery for prostate cancer. And if you have any understanding of prostate cancer and the aspects related to that, related to the procedure that most people undergo with regard to that surgery, it is not a surgery that a lot of people are passing away from. It's a surgery that majority of the people, they recover very well from. It's almost in many instances kind of like an outpatient type of procedure, even though it's inpatient that you deal with. But it's that much of a kind of like common surgery for those who deal with prostate cancer, to the degree that to believe that you're going to actually expire as a result of it is kind of like unheard of. Well, my dad, when they went in to do the procedure with him, as they were performing the procedure, they identified that there was more growth that they needed to address. They did so. And as a result, there was a little bit more pain that he was experiencing, discomfort, and things of that nature. And, he really wasn't himself. But I mean, who really is themselves after they have a surgery? Don't get me wrong. There is a possibility that you can, um, be more of like yourself. But when you have such an invasive type of experience, it can really just kind of take you down for a little bit, and that's why support around you is very good. However, my dad had some great people who wanted to support him, who were around him, who really wanted to give value to him. But there was some effort by others. And when I say others, that can be an individual or multiple people that really was not in his best interest. And it made it difficult for those who really cared for him to really provide some very in-depth and compassionate, generous care for him. As a result of the way my dad's post surgery care was dealt with, he ended up dealing with sepsis, getting an infection in the blood, and really wasn't well taken care of, and ended up going down quite rapidly, to the degree that the week of Thanksgiving, which was the fourth week of November, the week of Thanksgiving, he really didn't do much. He was very chill, just kind of relaxing. They ended up going in and out of the emergency room a couple times that week. And next thing you know, that Sunday, he passed away. And it turned out that there is possibility that he could have lived if there would have been some time given to give his body an opportunity to respond to the medical advancements and opportunities, the life-sustaining treatment that they were seeking to provide him. But someone made a very hasty decision, which ended up being to their benefit, of communicating wishes on his behalf that he didn't want to be resuscitated. And so they ceased life-sustaining treatment, and my father's life was expired as a result of that. Now, that was difficult because, my dad was in good spirits, on the one hand. On the other hand, my dad was the type of person, he was a preacher, pastor for a number of years. And my dad was a praying man. Not to mention a praying man, my dad prayed for people who were in the hospital and on death's door. All right, let me just be straight up to you. So much and so, one of his aunts, he went to the hospital to pray for her, and man, in faith, prayed that the Lord would, give her strength in her body and give her to be raised up again. And my aunt comes back and tells the story, because they said that my aunt was done. This is actually my great aunt. This was his mom's sister. My dad prayed for her, and I think he called her name or something like that. And after she came out of, I think she was in a coma or something like that. She came out of that coma and she came back testifying how she heard him calling her name and she had to get up from there, you know? And so my dad, he actually went and prayed for people who were in the hospital at death's door. And like in no way, shape, form, or fashion did I believe he did not want to be resuscitated unless he was going to be in a position to where he would be a vegetable. Like we had this conversation many a times. I knew his position on these things. That's not the position that the person who was in a position to make a decision looked at it. Again, it was for their interest. And I didn't really know it was for their interest until, and I'm going to get to that in a moment, until after the fact. So my dad passes December 1st. Interestingly, my birthday was the day before. This was the only birthday in my life where my dad did not say to me, happy birthday. The only one. Man. But I had no clue really what was going on. We get going in the services for the week and all that kind of stuff. And my brother and I, we rally around my dad's wife. My mother had passed away, years prior, about 13 years prior, actually. Rallied around my dad's wife at the time and, really tried to give some great support. And, within the first few days of the week, we got things situated so that we can have those services, towards the end of the week. And it turned out that she had a whole nother plan than we did. I mean, had communicated to the funeral directors team, to not allow anybody, including my brother and me, to have conversation with what was going on, things that we agreed upon with regard to the services. She went behind us and changed them and, made it to where nobody could come and view my dad's body before the services without her permission. Like, it was a lot of different things. Okay. Beyond that, I had no clue what happened in the emergency room on the day that he passed away, as far as the words of he didn't want to be resuscitated. Only reason I found that out is because one of my uncles, one of my dad's younger brothers, happened to be there, and in him being there, he heard what was said, but it happened so quickly to where he couldn't really, address it or deal with it in any way. And it, like, he literally saw my dad's life slip away, like with the speed of light. And as a result of what he shared with me, what happened with the services and all the details that I discovered, one of my dad's youngest brother ended up giving me some other details with regard to all the information with the funeral services, the funeral home, all the different people who were dealing with some things in that situation. And like, my brother and I were literally just dumbfounded. Like, why would this person do these things? And then we discovered that my dad's will was written in such a way that if she survived him, she would get access to all of his assets. Not only would she get access to all of his assets, we discovered that the way my dad wrote his will was that he fully anticipated that he would live well beyond his wife for two reasons. One, she was dealing with a lot of health challenges, but also she was much older than him, and she was starting to show signs of advancing in years in certain ways. Nonetheless, this is not about her. This is really not even about the situation. This is really about the chaos that situation created for me, my family, my family, my brother's family, us as a family. And when I tell you we thought that there was a mutual love exchange with regard to the person who made some decisions on my dad's behalf, and we discovered it was not. Now, here's my question. What do you do when you've been operating under a pretense and a perspective or perception that something has been mutual, and then you discover it has never been the case in the mind of the other person? And certainly, therefore, hasn't been the case for you. Now, let me say this. There's a proverb that says, or there's a perspective that says, he who has friends must first show himself friendly, which means you having friends really is more of you being a friend to that person. But man, it sucks when you find out the person is really not trying to be a friend back. Man, that sucks. And it's devastating, right? And man, when we found that out, it was like, whoa, you talking about devastation, you talking about frustration, you talking about chaos, you talking about confusion. So we discovered that all the assets that my dad had accumulated would in no way be accessible to us, his sons, versus the wife he had for about 10 plus years. Now, let me say, on the one hand, that's a frustration that we could have taken up with my father. One, he should have let us know what his will said. He should have given us copies of it, of various number of things. But when it comes down to it, the problem at the core was, why would you position yourself to be taken out like that? Why would you position yourself to actually be eliminated from this earth, have somebody have the ability to cease life-sustaining treatment and cause your life to be taken, and it be concealed by your will? And there be protection because of the fact that there is spousal confidence. Like, that was a lot of frustration. I was like, man, I wish my dad would have understood what could have happened by the way he worded that. If he would have just told me, I mean, I'm a specialist with words. Why didn't he? It was frustrating because he could have shared something. Even still, the reality of the chaos, the frustration, the confusion that we experienced, it could have literally caused us to just completely blow a gasket. And I told you, I don't know if I shared this in detail early on, but it was months before my dad passed, I had been inundating myself with wellness practice, with perspective, and pouring value into my thought process and mindset, reading a lot, taking in a lot of value and perspective, growing myself. Had no clue that I was going to be facing that situation months after I started that process. And literally, I remember when everything happened, oh my goodness, it was just chaotic, it was frustrating. Man, the day of his services, like, I really couldn't even function in a certain way, but I was able to recover from that because of all of the value that had been invested through my wellness practice. Remember, I told you yesterday, and I said it again today, if you want to see yourself get to wellness, be led to wellness from your chaos, your frustration, and your confusion, you have to dominate your chaos, frustration, and confusion, but you got to dominate it before it comes. You got to start dominating your frustration, your confusion, your chaos before it comes, so that when it comes, even if it catches you off guard, you've already prepared yourself. Man, I love this idea that I saw in the story of Abraham and how wealthy this man was. But not only how wealthy he was, how much wellness of posture and preparation he had in himself and in his whole household and his whole people group. Let me tell you why. Because his nephew ended up being a part of the capturing of 5 nations upon where his nephew lived. And what ended up happening was, when Abraham discovered that his nephew was a part of the capture of those 5 nations, he armed in his own household 300 servants. that had been born in his household, 300 servants, to go and fight against those 5 nations and take his nephew back. Why do I bring that up? It's because you've got to understand, you got to be prepared to dominate your chaos, frustration, and confusion before it comes. I was prepared to dominate my chaos, frustration, and confusion before it came. And I didn't even know that's what I was really doing. But I learned a valuable lesson. Let me get back to some more of the story. Another thing that happened in the context of when my dad passed was the will was kept from us. There was an attempt to keep us from seeing it so that we would not in any way try to affect what it is that my dad said. Man, we were not going to change what my dad said. Whatever my dad said, that's what we were going to do. Whatever it was. And matter of fact, that's what we have done to this day. All of the assets belong to his wife. Everything. It is what it is. We're gonna submit to the words because that's where the power is, in the words. But that's one of the things I talk about in the book that speaks to the situation. It's a warning, a message and warning to the world about the power of verbal and written words. Like, you got to be very intentional with your words. All right, we're gonna get off of that. You want to check out that book? You can go to Amazon. You can type in my name, Leo Simpson II. Books on Amazon, it'll bring it up. It has a black cover. It's like I said, my daddy told me he was murdered. Message and warning to the world about the power of verbal and written words. All right, get that if you want to. Here's what I want to get back to. The reality is this: to be in a position where I discovered that somebody made a decision for my dad's life to be ceased because they had benefit, man, you could blow a gasket. You can go crazy because you understand that this person actually had motive for his life to be ceased because they were going to cash in. They knew it. But here's what the district attorney's office said. The assistant DA said, I don't have an opinion on this, but here's what I need you to understand. The only person who can really tell us what happened and if this was in fact related to murder is gone. He can't talk to us. And all we have to go on is what he wrote in the past. Take that as a principle. Go back to some of what I shared and kind of listen to some of the principles I've talked about without me talking about the principles with regard to the situation. But because you don't want to lead this type of frustration and chaos for your family. You don't want to lead this type of confusion for your family if you can help it. All right. You can help it because you can do something about it. Nonetheless. So you add to it that there was the discovery that the decision was made not necessarily for my father's interest, but for the person's interest. And literally, you realize that, man, this was almost premeditated. Whoa. And because there was no ability for it to be litigated, there was no ability for us to really discover the absolute truth from that procedural process. So you add that to it as well, that the truth, cannot even be proven through a process. And then you got to sit and have conversations with your daughters, your children who love their grandfather about what just took place as you were discovering all that was going on. Let me share this real quickly. I don't know if this is for a number of other states, but certainly in the state of Texas, a person can actually be charged with criminal homicide if they actually cause life-sustaining treatment to cease from a person on the context of they do not have the appropriate authority and they use those words inappropriately. In other words, I'm saying that to communicate that words actually can kill. Like, you can use words as a murder weapon. I saw it. Oh, but let's add to this some more stuff. My dad passes on December 1st. My daughter is diagnosed with type 1 diabetes less than 30 days after that, going into the new year. She spent her new year after losing her father in the hospital. Yeah. spent her new year in the hospital. You talking about chaos upon chaos, frustration upon frustration, confusion upon confusion. I'm talking about my dad passes the day after my birthday, discovered that it was actually connected with criminal homicide that couldn't be proven. Then you discover that there was motive behind it. And then the person really didn't care about you that you thought actually cared about you. Then you were in the position to where you have to have this conversation with your children. And then having this conversation with your children, your daughter, your oldest child ends up dealing with a situation that the doctors think is going to be forever. They think it's for the rest of her life. Regardless, now she's in the state of almost being like a newborn baby you got to bring home, because we got to discover how to deal with this thing now. Mind you, that was also right before her 10th birthday. So she loses her grandfather, gets diagnosed with type 1 diabetes before she turns 10, right before her 10th birthday, spends New Year's in the hospital, all that kind of stuff. I couldn't even stay in the hospital because that was, where they had it to where only certain people could be there. Certain children under a certain age couldn't be there. So I had to take my little one home. All this kind of stuff, man, that goes nuts. Again, I didn't blow a gasket. I could have. Oh, I had some moments of being down. I had some moments of frustration. I had some moments of being hurt. I had some moments of not really knowing what the deal is. I had some moments. I had some moments. I had some moments. But because of the infusion of wellness before my chaotic, frustrating, and confusing situations, I was prepared to navigate it and be able to be led to wellness. I was able to dominate it and get wellness. I was able to dominate it and see my wellness get me to wellness. So while I was doing my live on Instagram, which is where this content actually comes from, I realized after I had finished that my audio actually went out. And literally before I started doing that live, I set my extra microphone in place just in case that one went out, because I had like a sneaky suspicion that might have been the possibility. Here's the truth. Truth of the matter is, doesn't matter. I do remember this one thing that I shared that I want to leave with you, and that is this. Like, you absolutely need to dominate your confusion, your chaos, your frustration, so that it doesn't dominate you. When the chaos, the frustration, the confusion comes, here's what you want to do. Instead of letting it subdue you and you succumb to it, you subdue it. Let it succumb to you and you dominate it. But you got to dominate it before it comes, by how you prepare yourself in wellness, how you pursue wellness, how you actually have a perseverance and a persistence in wellness. Listen, wellness is not something fluff oriented. It's the foundation of all of our wealth. I might have even said this. Myron Golden talks about what the definition of wealth is, and shout out to him. He gives me so much value and I love it. He says, wealth is the ability to create value for someone other than yourself. And watch this. Remember, in Wealth Wellness, we talked about the fact that wellness is the mindful, intangible aspect of our existence, and wealth is the measurable, tangible aspect, meaning it's observable. So ultimately, when you have wellness, you have wealth, which means you have ability to create value for someone other than yourself. Which means, watch this, I often say, if you get wellness, you can give wellness, and then wellness comes back to you. And one of the best ways you can get wellness is by giving wellness. Give the wellness you have. Same way with wealth. If you want wealth, give wealth. Give at the level of wealth you currently have and watch that level of wealth create more wealth for you. In other words, give your ability to create value for someone other than yourself and watch you be returned with other value. And I say this quite often, be well.